And when I was done, I said, Zibby, I would be happy to work with you anytime. I had no clue what that meant. I had no clue that the podcast would become a publishing house, would become a bookstore, would become readers' retreats, and I know I'm missing some entity here because there are now so many, but I know that one of them is where we're all sitting this afternoon. So before I begin, here's what I want to say. Zibby, your audacity and your determination are an inspiration, and readers and writers owe you an enormous thank you, and I'm happy to work with you anytime. From time to time, I speak to students at colleges and schools, and when I do, I bring a manuscript with me. It's whichever of my books I've just finished. Or maybe I should say it's whichever book Kate Medina, who has been my editor on every book since I began in 1988, is finished with. Kate still likes to edit on paper, which as a longtime computer user makes me a little crazy, but it's good for this purpose, which is to hold the pages up before the students and riffle through so they can see the pencil markings on most pages, including the ones that feature a slash through an entire paragraph. I think of those slashes whenever anyone says nobody in publishing edits anymore. Some days looking at what Kate has left on my pages, I think, I only wish. Now, why do I want to show those pages, evidence of my imperfections, to younger people? It's simple. If they got pages back from their teachers that looked like that, they would conclude that they couldn't write, shouldn't write, that they aren't writers. And I want to show them that that's just wrong. There's an old saying, writing is easy. You just sit down at the typewriter and open a vein. No one knows who said it. For years, I ascribed it to Dorothy Parker, but then someone told me it actually belonged to the sports writer Red Smith. Because of the typewriter, you know it's not Oscar Wilde, who seems to have been the source for most memorable quotes, or Shakespeare, who has more turns of phrase to his credit than maybe the Bible. If you go to Google for an answer, you get Ernest Hemingway and Thomas Wolfe and some terrible rendering that takes all the oomph out of it, but nowhere do you get the definitive answer for who said it. It's sharp and it's clever, isn't it? And it gives people exactly the wrong idea about those of us who do this for a living. Writing isn't easy, and you don't simply open a vein. I know what whoever said that meant, of course, and I suppose in some sense I mean it sometimes too. Some writing pours out of you in a flood of strong emotion, out of love or fear or passion or anger. Some writing is bloody because it's visceral. That's true, but lots is not. Pushing a rock uphill, that's how I describe what I do most days. But the other problem with the adage is that the way it's phrased suggests somehow that what we do is reflexive, effortless, that the words are just going to pour forth in a stream of feeling, and therein lies the problem. That attitude is another reason why so many people shy away from writing, especially young people, because it's difficult for them. And somehow we have come to believe that if you're good at something, it won't be difficult. I'm not sure why, because the notion is absolutely absurd. I mean, a surgeon becomes a great surgeon by years of concentrated repetition. An Olympic medalist does the same routine over and over and over again. The cookbook doyen Ina Garten, who is considered the queen of the simple, luscious meal, has a catchphrase. How easy is that? But in an interview, she once said, I find cooking very hard. She tests recipes over and over, and then she has assistants test them as well. It's easy for us because it was laborious for her. That entire notion of effortlessness, of being a natural, of opening a vein contributes to a kind of fantastical fairy tale view of the working writer, sitting down and spewing words and sentences in a welter of emotion, cousin to the composer with his hair standing on end as he hammers away at the piano in a fit of creative possession. And Lord, how I wish there was every day a fit of creative possession. Most of the writers I know, and many long gone who I've read about, found writing far from easy. There are exceptions. I find it very dispiriting that Dickens, who worked at a standing desk, often did it while parties were going on around him. Although Edith Wharton described herself as a slow worker, she must have been a somewhat charmed one. She wrote in longhand in bed each morning, dropping the sheets of stationery onto the ground to be gathered and typed by what must have been an exceptionally literate secretary. Like most writers, many of us who eat the same meal and keep to the same schedule every day, Wharton insisted on those mornings. As she wrote in a 1905 letter, the slightest interruption in the household routine completely derails me. When you write for a living and go out into the world and talk about it, one of the most omnipresent questions is, where do you get your ideas? I don't know about the rest of you, but I cook something up to answer that question. It's not exactly a lie, but it's not exactly a truth either, because for a fiction writer, the question of where things come from is a little mysterious. I remember beginning a chapter in my novel, Still Life with Breadcrumbs, with the arrival of a dog. And I actually said aloud, "There's a dog in this book?" In that unconscious way that fiction takes shape, the dog had been in the background and then emerged, totally to my surprise. Or as the great novelist Edgar Doctorow once said when I told him I was going out on book tour, "Oh, Anna, now you will have to pretend you know how we do what we do." The problem with leaving the issue as a bit of a mystery is that it smells of that opened vein, the inspiration or the muse, that sudden stroke that's meant to leave you gobsmacked at the desk and then pushing words around helter-skelter. That's not true. Madeline L'Anglais, who of course wrote the great book, A Wrinkle in Time, once said, inspiration usually comes during work rather than before it. I also especially love this from Somerset Maugham. There are 3 rules for writing a novel. Unfortunately, no one knows what they are. For me, at least, writing isn't easy, and I don't open a vein. I sit down. That's a piece of direction I give to anyone and everyone who wants to write, who is thinking about writing, who is asking how it's done, who is fearful and intimidated by the act, as I am, but in chair. It's not clever and it's not poetic and it doesn't bespeak inspiration. And as we all know, sometimes the butt is in the chair and the sentences are DOA. It's a day of bad writing. But bad writing, in my experience, sometimes leads to good writing. Not writing at all leads to nothing. Butt and chair, paper and pen in hand, or computer, or typewriter even. A word, then another,